Sawtooth buckwheat to upswing lunar, okay? Update? After Max felt the skins in the Guild Hall, a modest but not unfestive motorcade carried him without incident through the old quarter of the city, following the river to the Royal Helipad where he missed his connection, attaching himself to a convoy of knee-walking pilgrims making the triannual-long genuflection to the ancient and translucent stronghold of their outrageous demiurge. He made his way downwind overland by barge to a great inland reef, where he hoped to rejoin the tour. Missed the tour by less than an hour. 3 Sherpas and a quantity of cheese melt disappeared in the night. Got a favorable rate of exchange and a slight roughing up at the coin auction in the former capital. Came among them low in time to record the lunchtime festival of the rock-splitting tree where the disgruntled ancestors hang upside down, breaking wind through their ears. Meteor showers for 20 minutes at dusk, followed by possible UFO sighting. Proceeded south by east-west through the lesser wet desert. Lost 1 bearer to the drifting sickness and 2 others to a dark Orwellian view of the future. Light dusting of smelt at dawn quickly evaporated. After an excellent cold supper of flightless bird among the cliff dwellers of the misnomered Pampas, note, recommend uprating to 3-star, end note, Max ran into the dock just as the tour ship was steaming out of the harbor. Current position, hoping to intersect the tour route where it begins the steep descent into the inverted mountains. Max is just now crossing into the red zone. We'll update soonest. 2-tone soap dish, pastor manners, I don't care. Over.
Dear Mr. H, my efforts to rejoin the tour continue to be unsuccessful. Being alone like this for so long, I'm beginning to get the feeling that I'm not really going anywhere, as though I'm standing still and it's the scenery that's moving. Perhaps you know this feeling, as a travel agent I mean. I don't want to complain, and it's not as though things aren't happening to me. Many wonderful adventures which I fully expect to enjoy at my leisure when I am home again. I know that I will treasure these experiences always, even though many of them are awful to me now. My camera was confiscated at the border, along with the small bag in which I carried all my souvenirs. But I guess what I'm writing to ask is this: having no one to talk to about these experiences, and facing the distinct possibility that I will come home with nothing to show that I was gone, I'm beginning to wonder if I'm really having these experiences at all. If not, does this qualify me for a partial refund? Yours, Max.
Howdy two-door woof woof divine, okay? Update? When Max woke up, she was gone, along with his last clean pair of elastic-ribbed socks. Precisely at Angelus, the leaves fell from all the topiary in the forbidden sports arena, but nobody heard them. Current position, pursuing a rumor that his tour group has forgone the exquisitely nuanced finger dancers of the twice-removed tribes to have more shopping time in the invisible markets of Port Dismal. Max is trekking diagonally through the unforgivably frigid jungles of the landlocked Isles, where the natives communicate in American Sign Language taught to their forebears by an ape which escaped from the San Diego Zoo. They revere this ape as their primary god, wisdom grinning with whole head. We'll continue tracking. Monkey see, monkey do the hand jive. Over. The sky opens its eye and stares at us, fiercely, frankly. Our hearts burn and rise like the incense of dew. Our thoughts cloud. You come as a tear wept upon our island. Our minds gather like quicksilver in your palm. We taste your salt. The beach is restless. It pulls up its sheet, kicks it away. We toss in our hammocks. We missed you before you came. We will dream of you till you're gone. For the salt of your print, our seas wait in patience.
Dear Mr. H, I walked on the beach this morning. The tide was out, or maybe the beach was wider. The water, at any rate, looked very far away. I thought that if I walked long enough, I could reach it, and then if I kept going, I would be home. But then I thought, no, with my luck, I'd miss my turn and go clear around and come walking up behind myself, standing here looking at the water. At the hotel, they tell me there is a city out there under the waves. A city where all the drowned people from all the 7 seas come this time of year to vacation by the beach. They say the drowned fan their eyelashes in lieu of gills and speak with their hands, all except for the ones who are mute in life, who suddenly find themselves struck with eloquence. Couples meet in back alleys and continue shipboard romances with existential ennui and much pouting. Of course, there are many sailors, but no bars. However, there are several fine restaurants specializing in hearty, affordable lunches. This morning, I forgot the name of this place. I forgot my own name too, but only for about 10 minutes. I had to buy a newspaper to remember where I was. There was nothing in it about me, or if there was, I didn't recognize myself. I scanned the obituaries thinking I might borrow a name someone had recently discarded. The obituaries were full of the strangest, most horrifying stories. An elderly man who froze to death in a display case at the fish market and was partially filleted before anyone realized it. A child left unwatched on the beach who was attacked and eaten by limpets, which so completely encrusted her that for several days the archaeologists at the local university mistook her for an artifact washed up from an ancient wreck. Despite the horror of these stories, the tone of the obituaries was very light, almost celebratory. It turns out that the locals consider any death, other than by drowning, a good death. It seems that they have a superstitious dread of that city out there under the waves. Their idea of hell is to drown and come back as a tourist in a city where there are many sailors and no bars, and the suddenly eloquent mute chatter incessantly. Yours, Max. I think.
Today's top story: Satan is behind electronic banking. Cubist oracles probe space with mental death rays. The WC? Fact or menace to young minds? Vengeful ninja tots paralyze the nation's subdermal preparedness using no special tools and at a minimum risk to themselves. Freak rain of copper pennies ionizes sleepy farming community. Mice give milk, cows swim upstream to safety. Man hacks baby like watermelon, mutilates young wife, puts 4 cops in emergency ward before torching condo. Pleads environmental condition. This is Captain Overshoes with a message for the children of tomorrow. Did you ever watch a kitten chase its tail? And speaking of underpants, when was the last time you asked yourself this question? So remember, kids, who's fighting in the streets again today in a beleaguered capital of B, where supporters of the ruling C Party battled again with the followers of opposition leader D. Ex-people were said to have been killed and as many as Y detained. Questioned about EFG's support of the ruling party by HIJ news reporter KLM as he took off in his hot air balloon for his nth vacation this month, President O said as long as the PQRs continue to support anti-T activities in the UB region, we'll be lending our full weight behind the anti. It's official. Prince of Darkness to wed Julianaire heiress in private ceremony. Now this. More trouble of an undisclosed nature again today in B. Light to moderate casualties, except in low-lying areas. President O's spokesman held a press conference to announce no comment. In sports, wedge-shaped hickeys disqualify local high school from intra-regional quarterfinals. Mental health department reminds tri-suburban residents that spastic surgeons removing vicious area from glorious leaders' speak role cultural reconditioning and perspective revealing secret neoplot to Vaticanized the solar ice caps. Now this. New troubles were reported in A, the capital of B. No details as yet. You don't want to know. At least X are dead and as many as Y are in critical condition in the poor and strategically insignificant nation of Z, which you never heard of before and won't remember an hour from now.
In sports,
experts
the
believe the air, the water, or the
semi-autonomous
soil might be the cause.
quarterfinals was interrupted by an image of the Blessed Virgin bearing 3 secret prophecies from the ghost of Elvis. Responding to reports of a massive influx of people who don't look like you,
Repeating
your
our top
earless
story,
leaders are posting armed guard
unidentified
scouts on all
spokesman
the
said
streets
today
of this
that we've
area.
now been told everything
It's highly
we could
recommended
ever
that you
possibly
stay
need to
calm.
know about anything,
Remember
and
that they are
everything
there
else
for
is
your
classified.
protection, and as long as you
For
look
further
like
notice,
everyone else,
there
you're
will be no
perfectly
comment
safe.
about anything worth knowing we
Today's
don't already
weather,
know.
this line
Any
here will
question in
move to
any form
here,
about
and
anything
this
will be
line
treated
will
as
go
a
over that
serious
way,
breach of the
freeing
security
up this
blanket.
symbol to hover over this part of the
Now
map
this.
here. There will be record highs in this little town way the hell up here, and record lows down there, and record middles somewhere in this general direction.
Sale.
But first,
Special
this.
2 price, 1 for sale. Buy one half
A
pair,
bread
get the
commercial,
other half pair
more
at
car
full price.
commercials,
Buy now,
schoolboys in red and white frocks
slave
singing.
labor.
Young men standing in the row behind them were singing too. They were in a church and their
Lady crying
voices
about
were
a dinette
lovely.
set.
The boys sang very high, higher than girls it seemed. Their voices were inhumanly pure. Like when the guy who used to come on the tube rubbed wine glasses with his fingers and played the Blue Danube. They opened their mouths in O's like little fish. The men behind them almost seemed to be singing a different song. Their voices slid under the boys, like water moving slowly under the ornamental bridges of the bar. Then all their voices came together and sang one long word, up and down and up together.
Dear Mr. H, last night, a night of rain, the city glistening as though wrapped. I saw 3 patrol cars converge on a corner, and the way their lights pulsed on the slick street reminded me of the flexing abdomens of wasps, purely malevolently and mindlessly threatening. And I saw a leper on the roof of a car, eating chicken wings, his bald head larger and more massy than his body, which looked like a makeshift frame of chicken bones. A crowd had come out of the bars and surrounded him, threatening or just looking, and he nodded and ate from hands innocent of fingers as the nubbled flippers of a 12-week fetus. And I wondered if this is where I am going, to this smooth, sinless, monkish state of grace before air. And I saw a young man twitching down the sidewalk in the crudest parody of a walk, flinging his limbs away with a terrifying nonchalant violence, and understood that he was either a victim or a veteran of war. He was smiling a smile of hideous despair. And I saw 3 night workers standing at a bus stop in a nimbus of street-lamped rain, shoulders and shoes soaked as though they wore clothes of litmus, and they stood apart from one another, facing 3 separate directions, as they might have stood blocks or decades from one another. And I saw a pair of children at the blind end of an alley squatted and eating of a pile of rags, and their eyes, when they looked at me, had the robotic sheen of cat's eyes, and the rags moaned a little as one dreaming. And I saw a policeman's horse parked like a car outside an all-night coffee shop, its flanks steaming in the rain, and a man wearing several sweaters, over several coats, over several jackets, with many shopping bags gathered round him, was arguing with this horse. And I saw 3 ravens, or maybe crows, light on a swaying telephone line, forming a kind of banner across the street, as in some form of hieroglyphics, and I went another way. And I saw a blind girl in the doorway of a soot-blackened shop, and tried to recognize the tune she played on her fiddle, but her hair tangled the strings so that they barely whispered, and the song came only from the bow, a distant and frightening song like the angels in torment. Like the bow were strung with hairs, and each hair sang with the voice of who had lost it. And I saw an entire block where the buildings had been uprooted, and the holes in the clay gave me an ache in my jaw, and the houses across the way looked like they had been struck blind. And I saw the elegant couples come out of a warehouse where there was the whine and pounding of machines, and they were laughing. And one of the gentlemen held the bloody horns of an animal to his head, and stamped and bellowed, and they laughed. And one of the ladies kissed the fingers of a severed hand, and they swooned seductively. And I was afraid they'd know me. And I saw apes in overalls and rough workman's clothes in a bucket brigade across an empty street. They passed crates of lettuces and oranges from hand to hand and flung them into a dumpster. And I saw a darkened train passing over some rooftops with no sound where there were no tracks. And inside the slatted boxcars, I thought I saw the darkest hints of movement. And when it passed, sheets of notebook paper blew down and stuck to the street. But when I picked them up, the rain had blotted and starred the diagrams. And though I stuffed my pockets with them, still more ran in the gutters and pasted the cars. And I saw a girl in short pants get out of one of these cars, and before it had gone, she was getting into the next one. And the line was a block long, and the rain beaded on the windshields. And I saw a false dawn over the rooftops at midnight, a brutal carmine glare. And when I walked that way, I found that the harbor was on fire, and children standing on the docks throwing trash down into the flames, which hissed and crawled low over the water like gas flames, serpentine and shimmering like aurora. And through them glided silent fireboats which miraculously did not burn, and in the glow the children appeared black as charred meat. And I saw a public library ringed with soldiers and barbed wire, and the harsh lights trained on the entrance hissed in the rain, and the librarians came down the steps with atlases and encyclopedias opened over their heads as umbrellas, and they pleaded with the soldiers who would not let anyone through. And I saw when I turned a corner that the 3 ravens, or maybe crows, had come down off the wire and were standing in the street. And the one on my left spread his wings and hopped toward me. The one in the middle looked at me with one eye and made a sound like pumice rasping brick. The third looked so glutted he could not move. And as I backed away, the children swooped on them from behind and carried them into an alley, and not a sound or feather was raised.
fish opens its mouth and shows the emptiness inside. We saw the red glow below the darkness, which was like the hunger always burning in a woman. Higher up, we saw the walls pit voices into the pit. To some of us, our voices returned, but some of our voices went those who had fallen or flung themselves into the pit in times before ours. And these strange ages, hollow and sad, flew up into some of our faces and entered the mouths of some instead of their own voice. To tell our futures from these results, we found this unnecessary. As we rode, watching into the darkness, listening inside themselves to melancholy voices which were not their own voices seemed to call from the deep silence below.
And I saw my reflection in a pool of rain on a dented trash can lid. I thought I saw there the glint in the children's eyes, and the crows, and the lepers, and the soldiers' eyes, what I took for a ferocious naivete, brutal innocence, a dispassion lofty and malevolent as the angels. And I saw that I had been pretending never to have walked this walk before, not to recognize these streets, these scenes, as though I were inventing as I go, looking down at myself in sooty water, as though it were the prime reflection, the mind taking itself out for a stroll, inventor of the rain, of the eyes, the fire, the diagrams. Pages. Flatten them to dry on the radiators, or hung from clothespins in the bathroom before over the next days and weeks, tracing the faintest outlines of script, followed by the inevitable of a symbol which is almost clear, tantalizing my nights, a handful ciphered, until at times I would forget I had invented these clues in the first. I'd forget how pointless it is, which are the times we are most likely to miss the point, until the pages into some pretense of order, in order wholly invented, and write these words on them, the boxcars, who themselves may have been mere scribblers over previous scribbles. The notepaper, wrapping paper, toilet paper, tree, maybe even if they were very old, and each successive inventor or reinventor like me, pretending to take press selection, making patterns of its own. Yours, Max.